Hello, I'm your host, Giselle Gamby, and this is the Intuitive Pull podcast. First of all, I want to say thank you to the community of listeners because there have been breathtaking ripples that have occurred from listening to this podcast, and I'm excited to be witness of many, many more. This year, I'm dedicating this podcast to the theme of 2023 being a breakthrough year. No matter how successful, fulfilled, and happy we are, and the truth is that sometimes we're not, we all have thresholds we've placed on ourselves on how loving and powerful we've allowed ourselves to be. Following the intuitive pull does not negate our vulnerabilities and our humanness. Oftentimes, following the intuitive pull asks us to see our blind spots and to bring what has been in the shadow to light. And when we do, we can see that being fully human is in fact the precursor to remembering that we are infinitely greater than this mortal body, that we are infinitely connected beyond this time and space, not in spite of our humanity, but because of the intricate weaving of all aspects of our precious humanity. When we take responsibility and remember that you have the power to decide what you choose, and we fuse that with a letting go of control and surrendering into the plans that you didn't make, there is nothing that you cannot transform. My wish is that you see that the deeper you go, the greater your wealth in all ways, and that authenticity is always profitable. Have fun! Hello, beautiful community. It's Sunday at midday. I'm recording this episode, one of those ones that I had no expectation to record. I've just come back from a walk and I'm inspired to record this episode, which I believe will be a short one, before I head off to see my soccer team play, because unfortunately I can't play this year with some surgery that is needed on my knee. Yet I'm excited to go and see them play, and I think my feet will be kicking, phantom kicking, as I sit on the chair beside the sideline. So this episode is entitled Fields of Gold. I've had a really creative weekend, really creative weekend. I've been connecting with some beautiful people on Messenger and in conversation. And of course, one of my favorite words this year is convergence. And of course, I can see all the conversations, how they are molding and melding into something that I'm saying. And this something that I'm saying is what I want to speak about with you today with the title of Fields of Gold. One of my favorite songs, by the way, by Sting. I was talking to Penny, who features on this podcast many times, yesterday and today, and we were talking about how the invitation now is to swim in the field of infinite possibility. And Penny was offered some ideas to play with. One of them was to come to Kenya with me again for the second time. And I asked Penny to sit in the field of possibilities, to see into the field of possibilities. And the beautiful thing that happened was some really clear decisions were made. And there is just such an opening that is here. And it's really exciting to know in the depths of our bones that this year will be a really creative year for Penny. And the other person that I was speaking with today is Natalie, who also features on this podcast, who has also been interviewed on this podcast and who is coming to Kenya with me in less than 3 weeks now. And she was talking to me about her son, Reid, this beautiful 11-year-old, I think he is, beautiful boy, such an old soul. And she was telling me how he really wants to come to Kenya with her, which won't happen this year, but it will happen next year when she goes again. And he said to her, I want to touch an elephant's foot. And she wrote to me this morning and she said, he really believes that because he lives in the knowing that everything is possible. And she's been inspired by this and is currently writing as I podcast, and will be taking that beautiful knowing of Reid, that he lives in the knowing that everything is possible, to Kenya with her, so that she too swims in the field of infinite possibility. And she's going to suggest to him about writing a book called Touching the Elephant's Foot. Now, if you can get the energy of this podcast episode, this particular podcast episode, it's an energy of pure creation. It's an energy of freedom and openness and of intuitive seeing, and seeing into worlds that are beyond the worlds that we've lived up until now. And that doesn't just happen. It's not like all of a sudden, we can choose to live in this field of gold, in this field of infinite possibilities. It's not all of a sudden that we can choose to be in this openness and in this, really beautiful, fertile, creative space that I have been in all week. There's a reason why Penny, Nat, and I are in this place at this time and have been having these conversations over Messenger this weekend. It's because each of us have been facing into what has been in lovelessness within ourselves. Each of us have been facing into what has been in the shadows that we didn't even know existed there. Each of us have been facing into what has been in our blind spots. And those blind spots have created thresholds on how powerful, on how loving, and on how creative our life can be. Yes, each of us have been doing that for a long time. I mean, I know that Penny started this journey many, many years ago, and I started it many, many years ago, and Nat started it, I think, around 2014. But we go through cycles, and there are cycles that come, and I've mentioned it on previous podcast episodes, that in my experience, they come in 10-year cycles. There's a point in time in that 10-year cycle where we feel like we are going into contraction again. And yet, because we've done the work for many years now, we know that the times where we feel like we're going into contraction, where things aren't feeling so good, where we're having experiences that we didn't expect to have, that don't feel so good, we now know that love is working her hand here. And we have faith that love is working her hand here in order for us to go into those places of lovelessness that still exist within us that we didn't know existed. Or if we did know that they existed and we have not been able to free ourselves from that, process creates itself such that, and I need to add this very important point, process creates itself such that as long as we are willing to take 100% personal responsibility for those places of lovelessness within ourselves, and as long as we know that it is okay to be fully, fully human and to feel all those human thoughts and feelings and feelings of shame and grief and anger and rage and sadness and whatever other feelings are there, anxiety as well. As long as we are able to allow ourselves to be fully human, yet knowing that love is leading the way. If we do not take 100% personal responsibility, if we don't make the decision to take 100% personal responsibility for ourselves, and if we don't remember that love is omnipresent even in the shadows, then we're going to have a really hard time and we're going to suffer. Yet, if we remember that this is happening because our soul has asked us to leave no stone unturned, and we in our human form have said yes to that mission, and we know that as we leave no stone unturned, that love is always present and holding us and creating process on behalf of us, then that lovelessness will be freed. It will be freed into unconditional love. It will be freed into such an appreciation and gratitude. It will be freed into a sense of wonder and awe at what all of that was purposed for in the bigger picture. And so if you can feel the energy of this part of the conversation, yeah, there's a heaviness to it. It feels like a density to it. And it feels very grounded in our human form. It feels very human. And what I can say is that, personally speaking, I have been in that place from December. I hit into it very, very strongly in June last year. And then I hit into it again in December last year. And I've been holding all of that within myself. And yes, I can say that I am free from the lovelessness that was within me. And so this is what happens on the other side of that. There's a time, and we can't plan it, we can't foresee it, we can't diarize it's going to happen on this day. This is where the practice of surrendering and the practice of really leaning into faith works for us, because it takes us to that moment where we feel a spaciousness within us, where we begin to receive intuitions that we were not expecting. And, in my world, it's the intuition of this new program called Sacred Leadership. I'm so excited by this program. This program has been working me all weekend. As I said, I've been in such a joyful creative space. And interestingly, music has been one of the vehicles this week for me to continue seeing into this vision of sacred leadership. Having said that, if you listen to the previous episode about my dream with my father, and my father calling me into this most beautiful, beautiful concert with music that was playing that was just touching my soul, and he was calling my mum. He was calling my mum over to him by this music. Yesterday, I realized, as I was listening to music, because that's one of the things that I do when I go for a walk, it opens me up. It's one of my meditation spaces, even though I don't have my eyes closed. When I was listening to music yesterday, I realized actually Dad was calling me home into my love of music, into my great love of music. And so music has been opening vision for me this weekend. And it has also reminded me to use music as part of the process that I hold for other people. So when we go to Kenya, music will be part of it. When I hold the program Sacred Leadership here in Manly, Sydney, I will be using music as one of those vehicles. And so the point I want to make, if I was to summarize this episode, is that you cannot create the new from former versions and identities of who you've been till now. It just doesn't work. You cannot create the new. You cannot see the new if you are still sitting in the position of your previous version of who you've known yourself to be. It just doesn't work. And so I want to remind you that if you are in that place of what feels heavy and confusing, and you have no understanding about what's going on, I want to promise you that should you take 100% personal responsibility for being the source of your life, and should you remember that love is always omnipresent and is even here in the darkest of days, that what is happening is a shedding of a skin, a shedding of a way of being, a shedding of a version of reality that no longer wants to belong to who you are. And on the other side of that are the richest fields of gold. But you cannot see those fields of gold without going through the eye of the needle. And as I said, I feel that this eye of the needle comes around 10 years or so for me. And my prayer for you on this episode is to have faith, to lean in, and to remember that you are love, always were, always are, and always will be. And welcome what's on the other side of that, because I tell you what, it's really nice being over here after going through the eye of the needle myself. It's so nice being over here. So let's welcome those fields of gold. Let's swim in these fields of infinite possibility. Like Reid, let's touch the elephant's foot and live knowing that everything is possible. Thank you. Ciao, ciao. Hey guys, if you love this podcast, I have 2 requests. Number 1, sign up to the newsletter, which you can find in the show notes. Sharing is one of my superpowers, and there is only so much that I can share through the medium of podcasting. And I have very big plans this year to be radically generous to you. So sign up to that newsletter where you'll be able to receive a whole lot more that I trust will be super valuable to you. And number 2, I'm a massive referrer of the people I love to the people I love. Please share this episode or podcast with the people you love, and let's create some more breathtaking ripples of impact.